All right, here we've got our customary comprehensible input is all you need comment of the week. A la flèche. Pensez? Yeah. A la flèche says 100. Should I rate it with a French accent? No, that would be offensive, right? Uh, 100% false. I became fluent in English with almost only input. Watching, listening to hours and hours of content. I enjoyed barely spoken English in real life. I was still able to get a job requiring fluent English. I was even the most fluent in the team. That last sentence is key. I was even the most fluent in the team. So you were the one-eyed man in the land of the blind. Everyone else sucked, and you sucked at English slightly less. Fluent by watching and listening is not a thing. You will improve if you spend lots of hours watching and listening to a language, uh, especially if it's a language like English that you had 5 to 10 years of classes in school. It's very different to learn a language from scratch. A lot of these input guys, it's also some Brazilian dude talking about it. You can learn a language without studying, and this is how I learned English. Um, it's very different to do that after 5 to 10 years of classes, compulsory classes in school, like we all had for English, and then everything is in English online. So you just, as long as you find some content that you like watching and listening to, eventually you'll get a decent level of comprehension. Your speaking, though, unless you practice, you do some real work, your speaking will never be very good. And, and that's it. And the problem with this kind of advice as well is that the people who've learned English by having 5 to 10 years of classes in school and then thousands of hours of internet time, whatever, going on forums, using social media, watching stuff, Netflix, uh, YouTube, whatever. It's very different from these people are in no position to give advice to someone trying to learn a language from scratch, because the person trying to learn a language from scratch is not learning a language from scratch after 5 to 10 years of classes in the language like you had when learning English. So even if classes are not very good, I mean, have you been to France or Spain? Really, level of English is not good in general, but you still know more or less how grammar works, and you know a lot of vocab after doing that. Also, because the languages are related and vocab is pretty easy to begin with. So after 5 to 10 years of classes, you know lots of vocab and a general idea of how grammar works, especially because English grammar is easy. So just by being exposed to it, watching and listening, you'll end up with a decent level of comprehension. Not speaking, but a decent level of comprehension. Your speaking will be maybe serviceable. You'll be able to have conversations if you, yeah, and if you're, it's not that hard to get conversational. That doesn't mean you speak well, but and definitely not fluent. But I mean, and the fact that you have to say I was even the most fluent in the team is already telling enough. But again, this is not useful advice for people who did not go to school and have 5 to 10 years of classes in the language they want to learn. And maybe the language is not easy. It's not a relatively close language to the one they are trying to learn. And yeah, they have no background in language. They have no classes. The language they're learning is also not English for the most part. Everything online is in English. To learn any other language, it's much harder to find content. You can find content, but my point is, um, for anyone that's not a native English speaker, you can function online in English pretty easily. If you had classes, and everyone did. If you're willing to go through a phase, and it should be just a few weeks of just trying to do everything in English online, like, instead of instead of watching everything in Spanish or French, I watch it in English. If you do it for a few weeks and you're already like B1-ish or A2 level from school in terms of vocab, yeah, eventually you'll understand pretty well. Again, if you're an adult starting from scratch in a language you've never studied before, and there's much less content available because there's more content in English than all the other languages combined. So again, this is no useful advice for anyone. This is scope. You you guys are lying to people and telling them that they can get good at the language just by watching stuff and listening to hours and hours of content. Yeah, you learn a little bit, but unless you do some serious work and you front load that work, you see, if you front load the work and you do lots of memorization in the beginning, shadowing, really hard work, retrieval practice, language islands, blah blah blah, for a few weeks, then you can coast and you can cruise and you can go from intermediate level to advanced level after doing all that just by being exposed to more and more content. Just no effort, just enjoy the language after doing all that hard work in the beginning. If you don't do any of that and you just rely on videos and music or whatever you're listening to, 3 years later you're still okay. You understand a little bit, but you won't be able to have a proper conversation. So you you're trying to build the house from the roof, starting from the roof, and it doesn't work like that. And people, this kind of people giving this advice, this kind of advice, are people who only have experience learning English as a second language, and their only experience is in a language that they had lots of years of classes. It's not very difficult language to learn the basics because it's similar to their own language, and everything online is in English, so it's even more. It's like transitioning to English from any other language online is way easier than transitioning from into any other language really. So this is all. It's really bad advice for anyone who's learning anything except English. Um, and even if you're trying to learn English, a lot of people talk to me. I went to my village the other day and visit my family and met some old friends there, and they were like, "Yeah, I'd like to get good at speaking English because all those years of classes I still can't speak English. And for when I go on holiday and stuff and for work it'd be good as well." And I told them, "Yeah, start listening to stuff, watching stuff in English. That's all going to help. But language islands and shadowing and retrieval practice. If you want to speak well, you need to actively work on your speaking. No one gets good at speaking a language without practicing speaking, right? So stop coping with all this nonsense and start working hard on improving your skills. No one got good at anything without